What's going on, Spurs fans? It's Noah McGar George here from Pounding the Rock, and I'm back with a special mailbag edition of Luka Samanic questions. So y'all sent me in questions on Twitter, and I'm going to do my best job to answer them. So we're going to start off with some questions, easy questions, nothing that needs major explanation or any film, and then we're going to dive into some questions that are film related. So we'll take a look at some tape, really get some good analysis in there. So let's start off with @Heimer. They ask, what was it about him or his situation that made San Antonio take a generally different approach than past international players and bring him right away to do his development here? So I think what's different between other international players like, say, Livio Jean-Charles or even a Nikola Milutinov is that they wanted complete control of his developmental track. Now, when you have players who are playing overseas, even though you have their draft rights, of course you can have contact with the team that they're playing for, but you can't force them to do anything. You can't force a training regimen upon them. You can't have them focus on specific aspects of the game. That team that is, that they are under contract with at that moment, they pretty much have total control. And I think with this guy, especially someone who they drafted at 19, which is one of their highest picks in the last 20 years, it's somebody who they wanted to have a close eye on and really be able to be hands-on with. So that's about as well as I can answer that question. I don't really know what the Spurs were thinking, but that's my best assumption. And we'll move on to @Tomas Fuse. He asks, what did the Spurs see in him that caused them to value him so much more highly than the rest of the NBA that generally had him pegged as a second rounder? So I did see Luka Samanic on draft boards as low as the second round. I also saw him as early as the mid-first round. And I think with Luka here is they saw someone with a ton of potential. And right now, that's probably what Luka is. He's more theoretical in a lot of his skills than tangible. And I've said that about other prospects, even prospects that I've talked about on Pounding the Rock for this upcoming draft class. Now, he's a guy who moves his feet really well. He's a fluid athlete, moves more like a guard than a traditional big man. He can spread the floor out. He can shoot the three. And he's a switchable defender. In theory, he will be very switchable. So I think they just took a big swing on somebody who they saw had a lot of potential. And I don't think he would have been there at 29. I know that he worked out for the Sixers. They were pretty high on him. And it can be frustrating. I know that there was a Brandon Clark, there was Matisse Thybulle, there was Nazir Little, there was Keldon Johnson available at 19. The Spurs took him. I know it's frustrating, but we're going to have to be patient with him and see where he comes out at the end of this. But moving on, from Alejandro Pena, chances that he gets frustrated by lack of play time and just goes and plays overseas like other international first rounders. I don't really see that happening. I think the chances of that are very slim. Luka Samanic, he's already here, and that separates him from other prospects. I mentioned Livio Jean-Charles and Nikola Milutinov. They didn't come here right away. And, Livio Jean-Charles played in the G League, and he played in Summer League, and even got into the preseason. He never was really a great fit with the team. He also played a bit of an outdated style of basketball. The Spurs will win now. He didn't really help them win now. And with Nikola Milutinov, he signed an extension not that long ago. He's not coming over anytime soon. And I believe they drafted him with the intentions of stashing him so that they could save some money to sign who became Pau Gasol. And this is a different situation than either of those players. They probably wanted a very hands-on approach with him, and they wanted to bring him here. And I'm just looking again at the question. Chances that he gets frustrated by lack of playing time and goes overseas. We definitely know he's been frustrated. He's, made comments over social media. His body language hasn't always been great, but the chances he leaves are really slim. He's already here. The Spurs are not going to give up on a guy who they drafted at 19. And Luka Samanic is making more money here probably than he would make overseas. I know he played 15-ish minutes per game when he was not with the Spurs yet. And I'm blanking on the name of the team, but I don't know that opportunity is going to be there with a legitimate top-tier team. I think he probably stays with the Spurs. I don't see him leaving. But we'll move on here. So @Bro Spurs asks, in 3 years, will we consider him a bust? Well, in 3 years, we should know if Luka Samanic is a bust. He'll have had multiple years in this system, a chance to work out any kinks in his game, improve in any areas that he's struggling with currently. I don't personally think he's going to be a bust. We've seen the Spurs time and time again make the most of the talent that they have. From DeJounte Murray and Derek White to George Hill and DeJuan Blair to Kawhi Leonard and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. These are guys who maybe weren't as valued by other teams in the league, but the Spurs saw something in them, really worked hard with them, and they, it's a wide range of serviceable players to all-stars to Hall of Famers. And I think even if Luka Samanic becomes just a role player at 19, you can't really be that upset with that, because a realistic expectation for somebody from the mid to late first round should be a role player. Most of the time, these guys are not going to be the Jimmy Butlers or the Kawhi Leonard or the Tony Parker that we've talked about who surprise everybody. So if Luka Samanic can just be a serviceable rotation guy, we should be happy with what we get. And from @Dustin Luger, do you think he's happy in San Antonio? I can't personally speak for him. I don't know what he's thinking. But if I were in his in his shoes, I would be a little bit disheartened by what I've seen. And I've seen a ton of it on social media. People are ready to call him a bust. They're ready to bash him. He's been here maybe a year now. It's just unfair. 19-year-old guy turning 20, to call him a bust after 1 year, I think that's unfair. And I think the Spurs always knew that he wasn't going to be an immediate contributor. And, some Spurs fans probably didn't realize that. They probably saw the 19 and thought, oh, well, he's a really high pick and he's going to play. And that just wasn't the case. I think the Spurs were very aware of what they were getting themselves into. But we'll move on now. @Sarthik9 James, sorry if I mess up your as well. You can tell me if I did. I'll try to say it well next time. But he asks, if a good player becomes available, will the Spurs trade Samanic in the deal? How true do you think that is? I think it's fair that the Spurs would look to trade any of their guys. And I've said it at times that, so-and-so is untouchable or they shouldn't trade him. But I don't think the Spurs actually have any A1 talent guy like a Luka Doncic, a Jason Tatum, a Zion Williamson, a Devin Booker, a John Morant. They don't have that foundational cornerstone in any of these guys. Or we don't know if we have that yet. They may have shown flashes of being able to carry a team for a few minutes here and there at the end of a late game like Lonnie did in the Houston game where we thought, this is his coming out party. But clearly Lonnie and Keldon and DeJounte and Derek, they all still have work to do. And Luka Samanic is included in that. He is a very good prospect, but I wouldn't say any of these guys are truly untouchable. If somebody comes calling, and I'm not really sure how they define good players, is that an all-star, is that a rotational piece? I don't know, but if a team comes calling and the Spurs are trying to stay in contention, I think it would behoove them to at least answer the phone, listen to that offer, and then make their decision. But to just outright go, no, they won't be a part of the deal, I think that would be foolish. Because probably every single one of the young guys on this team, if they could grab somebody who is a true franchise player by moving a few of them, I think they would do it in a heartbeat. And we'll move on to the very last question from @SpursHT. Since he plays more like a wing, can he be a viable alternative at the 3 spot? I don't really think so. Maybe in like a pinch he could play a little bit of 3. He's 6'11", 6'10", somewhere between there, 227. He does have good feet, and he does have some qualities of a wing, but I think he's more of a wing-forward hybrid. I don't think he's ever going to be a true 3. He is fluid, and he does move well, and he can shoot the ball, but I think with the rest of the league going kind of smaller, we've seen it with the Rockets. That's a very, very extreme end of the spectrum, but the rest of the league has kind of followed suit. They're getting a little bit smaller. It is becoming positionless. I don't really see Luka Samanic playing the 3 much. I think he could be potentially a little bit exposed there, not quick enough to get past 3s. I'm not really sure, but in my opinion, I don't really see him playing much 3s. And actually, I did forget a question here. Here is a question from @TownsDylan. They ask, what can his role be on the next contending Spurs team? And that's a very interesting question, and I'll go ahead and lead off by saying, and I hate to say this, so don't attack me, but the Spurs are not going to be in title contention anytime soon unless a drastic move is made or an unexpected player from the draft becomes some sort of all-star or superstar. The Spurs just are not going to be a contending team anytime soon. They did go to the playoffs a year ago. 7-game series with the Nuggets, really tough, drag it out series. But, they just really aren't even in playoff contention, in my opinion. Yes, they could be, but you're adding LaMarcus Aldridge back, maybe. Trey Lyles back, maybe. Is Jakob Poeltl coming back? Is DeMar DeRozan accepting his option, his player option? Seems to be that would probably be the wise thing for him to do. That's a lot of money to leave on the table. If he accepts that, what do they do then? There are just so many question marks. I don't know, but in theory, I guess Luka Samanic could be someone who kind of operated in the same kind of role he had in the G League this year, where he wasn't the focal point or even really the second option, but more of a third, fourth option, someone who gives you 10, maybe 15 points per game, switchable defender, guy who can spread the floor. You can run plays for him, but you're not going to run the offense exclusively through him. You're not going to want to rely on him too heavily. Now, things could change. He could really go on some incredible developmental track like Kawhi Leonard did, or Tony Parker did, or Amadu Ginobili did, but those guys are so far and few between. I think it's unfair to compare them to his situation, where realistically, what you can hope for him is a guy who's a role player, or a guy who's a really, maybe a solid starter. But now we have finally reached the end of the more simple questions to answer, and we'll dive into the film questions, and the first of which is from @AustinWN7. How much weight does he need to build to go against some bigs in today's league? And I mentioned earlier, the league is getting smaller. There aren't a lot of true bruisers left. You see guys like Jahlil Okafor or, Enes Kanter or Derek Favors, guys who would have been highly valued maybe 15 years ago, just kind of a dying breed in the NBA. Yes, they're going to have a role off the bench, maybe as a scorer, but they're just not as valuable as they used to be. And for that reason alone, I don't really see Luka Samanic needing to bulk up to get, be able to bounce and, jockey with these big guys, these true big guys, because I don't think there are going to be that many of them that he needs to do that. Now, does he need to add weight? Yes, and we'll go ahead and address that in this clip here.
On this play, Luka gets the ball. Let's pause it right above the break, and you can't see it yet, but Royce O'Neal is on him, a very, very strong defender, somebody who's only about 6'4", but negates that lack of height with a very sturdy, compact frame at 226 pounds. So he just weighs 1 pound less than Luka. And we're going to see Luka kind of struggle to create space here and get past Royce O'Neal. So we're going to unpause it, and here he drives, takes this bump, and look, he is automatically displaced. And this is where some added strength would probably help Luka finish over the top of Royce O'Neal. Now, Luka is relatively explosive in space, but in a crowd or receiving contact, Luka just doesn't pop the same. And we're going to see Luka, when I unpause it, try to finish, and he gets contested by Royce O'Neal, a hand on the ball, and the Jazz go the other way. This time, Luka gets the ball out of an inbounds pass, and pause it here. He's going to start backing down Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, someone who is shorter than he is at 6'7", and a little bit lighter at 220. And he's just going to struggle to move him out of the way, so he's going to hit a spin move here, kind of lose control. Luckily, pause it, Drew Eubanks is going to bail him out kind of here with a nice cut to the basket. And Luka does a good job of keeping his head up and finding Drew Eubanks as well. And we'll talk about his passing later, but this is just an example of his lack of strength and how it hurts him. Now, we've talked about strength in a more traditional sense, and pause it, Luka is going to get the ball here on the baseline, and Sterling Brown is going to recover. And one of the things that I have noticed with Luka is when he takes contact, he has this tendency to lose his balance. And we'll go ahead and watch the clip. This is an area where core strength would really help Luka. Before Joe Ingles gets his pass off, let's stall it. So we have Ed Davis running right towards Luka Samanic, and he's going to just bowl through Luka. Not an offensive foul. Luka just doesn't have the strength to stay upright, and it's not like this was a common occurrence, but addressing the very initial question from the film session questions, Luka is going to need to add strength if they want him to be able to stand up against these bigger guys. And no, I don't think that's going to be his role, but it definitely won't hurt to add strength. And we'll unpause it, and bam, knocks over Luka, finishes with ease, and the Jazz get 2 easy points.
Another great question from @GoSpursGo. They ask, do you think he still needs to fix his shot mechanics? Shot looks a bit flat to me, not the elite looking stroke I was hoping for. And I agree, I think his shot definitely needs some work, and we'll go ahead and take a look into how we can improve it and what's wrong with that shot.
Before we do anything else, let's go ahead and analyze Luka's shot here. So he's going to take a dribble and do this sort of stutter step that's arguably a travel to get into his rhythm and pause it. So Go Spurs Go said that he has a flat shot. And that's very true. And one of the reasons that he has a flatter shot is his release point. It's further out front and lower than a shooter like Patty Mills or Bryn Forbes or Davis Bertans. And his release is a little bit slower, but it is not a slow release by any means. And we're going to watch this shot. So yeah, it's a little bit flatter, but it gets the job done all the same. And you can't really argue with the results. While the previous shot went down, there are a few things that stop Luka from being as consistent of a shooter as possible. And let's pause it right about here. Look at Luka's feet and his shoulders. They aren't square to the basket, and that's one of the things that has stopped him from being a consistent shooter. Those percentages could definitely be higher, and I think we'll see a rise in those percentages as he continues to work with Chip England and the Spurs staff on that shot. And let's watch it. So he shoots it and clanks off the front of the rim. And if he can get those shoulders and feet square, I think we'll see a legitimate three-point shooter down the road.
And from @SA Bobcat, they say, dude is fire from distance, but can you address 1, movement without the ball, 2, passing high-low, and 3, comparison to how Joker passes out and how Luka passes out of defenses. Before we even get into the film, I just want to make this clear. Luka is nowhere near the passer Nikola Jokic is, and pretty much no one in the league is. There are very few passers in this league who are as good as Nikola Jokic. Generational vision, generational player, generational passer. It's if that's what you're expecting with Luka, you're going to be disappointed. Luka can pass the ball, and I'll go ahead and show y'all what I mean by he's not a generational passer, but he can pass the ball pretty well.
On this play, Luka sees he's open and frees it. There are 2 defenders looking right at Luka. He could have shot this ball, but he sees Marco Bellinelli is wide open in the corner and unpause it, kicks it to Marco, who knocks down the 3. Just a good pass from a young player. Here we're going to get a look at his off-ball movement as he slides to the corner and stop it. We're also going to get a look at his passing, and he knows Keldon Johnson is wide open on the perimeter, and he generally knows where his teammates are. Now, he doesn't always make passes that lead to an assist, but it does here. Kicks it out to Keldon, who knocks down the 3, and another solid play from Samanic. Before we get into this play, I just wanted to say that I'm not ignoring SA Bobcat's question about high-low passing. There just wasn't any evidence of Luka making those type of passes in the NBA, and that's really just a product of him not playing very many minutes. And we're going to go ahead and hop into the action here with Lonnie Walker up top, and Luka's going to notice his man isn't paying attention, back into the corner, get an open 3, and he's going to brick it, but this is the kind of movement you want to see without the ball from Luka.
And now @hobbyist Brendan says, what is his biggest weakness? And do you see him reaching the ceiling? The tools suggest he has. I'll go ahead and address the second question first. Do I see him reaching the ceiling? His tools suggest he has. I think there's just such a wide range of possible outcomes with Luka Samanic that it's tough to nail where he's going to end up. I don't want to guess at that, but I will say he does have a few weaknesses in his game, and we'll address just what I think might be his biggest weakness right about here.
The number one thing I want to see Luka work on is finishing at the rim and protecting the ball on drives. He gets stripped here, and Chris Chiozza finds a teammate for an easy 2 at the other end. And on this next play, he doesn't get stripped or anything, but Luka catches the ball on the perimeter and then drives and noticeably tries to avoid contact and just doesn't have the touch to finish on this play. And this is kind of a noticeable theme. Watch, he catches a beautiful feed from Lonnie, cannot finish, gets the yips. And on the very next play, we're going to see him go to this go-to move he likes, the spin move, but again, just does not have the touch to finish there, and that's something he should really work on. On this play, he's going to get the ball, and he is going to draw a foul and get contact here, but he doesn't really finish well through contact. He's not going to get a lot of and ones, and it's just something he should work on, and it's something that Lonnie Walker and DeJounte could also afford to work on as well. And we're going to see it one more time here. He's going to drive, avoid contact, not enough touch or strength to finish, and that is something he needs to work on.
@R_Pat13 asks a pretty solid question here. What should he work on most if he wants to get minutes fast? So aside from the weakness that I addressed here, he does have other flaws in his game, and we'll hop into that right around here.
We've talked about his shot, finishing, and protecting the ball, but Luka could really afford to improve both his defensive motor and his defensive awareness, and we'll take a look at that on this play. Samanic is going to start off on Prince and then rotate over. Let's pause it. So now Eubanks and Samanic are protecting the rim against Joe Harris, a guy who isn't particularly explosive, and I'm pretty sure that Eubanks could have handled him on his own. But we're going to unpause it again. Samanic recovers to the perimeter, and now there is another drive. And let's pause it one more time right here. Joe Harris has now driven to the bucket, and there seems to be absolutely no communication between Luka and Eubanks. And when we unpause it here in a second, you're going to see that they get in each other's way, and Joe Harris is going to round the corner for an easy 2 at the rim, and that's just not ideal defense. This time down, Frank Mason has the ball and he drives, and let's pause it. Look at Luka's eyes. He is staring at the ball. This is just blatant ball watching, and it's not something you really want to see, but it's pretty common with young defenders. And we're going to go ahead and unpause it, and it is too late. If this was a good shooter, they would have knocked down this shot. It would have been money, but thankfully it's the eldest Antetokounmpo brother, and he's never made a 3 in his NBA career, and he doesn't do so on this play. Lastly, we'll take a look at a play that highlights his wavering motor, and he misses his shot, and he looks pretty dejected and doesn't really even run to get back into this play. And by the time he does get back into the frame here, not in place, gives up a wide open shot, and he's bailed out by a miss, but that's not great.
My boy Dame at DA Bartonek asks, offensively, what role do you think he'll be most comfortable in? I talked about that a little bit earlier, but let's go ahead and see why I think he fits more of a secondary, tertiary, fourth option type role in the NBA going forward.
As we explore what kind of role Luka Samanic could have with the Spurs offense down the line, let's first look at how they utilized him and what areas of improvement he needs to work on. In this clip, Luka's going to take the rebound and try to go coast to coast, but he just doesn't have a tight enough handle, and he's going to need to work on that if he wants to be a threat off the dribble and not a liability for a turnover. Here, Luka's going to try to take his man off the dribble and then transition to a back-to-the-basket game, but he never looks comfortable, and it's probably going to be a while before he's ready to carry a load on offense. The Spurs mostly used Luka off-ball, didn't run many plays for him, and that's where he's going to get the majority of his points to start his career like he does here from the three-point line. And this little pick-and-pop play between him and Lonnie Walker best encapsulates how I think the Spurs will use him once he becomes a more important member of the offense. He isn't the hardest screener, but he sets a nice off-ball pick for Keldon, who gains some momentum on the drive and finishes with a layup at the rim.
An excellent question from Trevor Wright. He says, what is the best projected role on defense for Luka Samanic? Now, that can be kind of a tough thing to pin down, but I really like Basketball Index. They have awesome content, a really cool tool, and we'll go ahead and look at some tape and talk about, what his role could potentially be moving forward. So Basketball Index has this awesome defensive roles glossary, which gives you a good idea and an easy breakdown of what kind of role a defender might have. And I think the role that Luka Samanic best fits is perimeter big, which is defined by them as a big who does not defend in the pick and roll as often and either stays with shooters on the perimeter or can rotate to help at the rim. Now let's go over to the next tab, and you can see some of the players that fit that mold are guys like Tobias Harris, Pascal Siakam, Robert Covington, Taurean Prince, Thaddeus Young, Lauri Markkanen, Rudy Gay, and Draymond Green, and I think Luka Samanic could fit into this role as well.
So I want to lead off by looking at a couple of plays where Luka Samanic does a great job at staying with guards on the perimeter. Chris Chiozza tries to shake him here, can't lose him, passes it out. Luka stays with his man. It eventually works its way back to Chris Chiozza, forces him off the line, forces him into a pass. And he's a little bit late here on the shot, but Chris Chiozza doesn't make it, and overall, an excellent possession. Then again, here we have him on Donovan Mitchell off of a switch. And this was by far his most impressive defensive possession to me. Forces Donovan to give it up, and Royce O'Neal forces up a shot that is not something he would normally be comfortable doing off the dribble. Then again, here you have Luka on a guard, forces him into a tough turnaround, exactly what you want to see, and it displays his great foot speed. And then here, watch Luka as he runs around screens, and he does a great job of navigating the screen, stays close to his man, forces him into a tough shot, and he makes it, but you can't be upset with him on this one. And another solid defensive possession from Luka Samanic stops the drive. It gets kicked out to Damari Carroll. He picks him up and blocks his shot, even though he's not really a shot blocker. And this three gets drained, but it's not Luka's fault. Moving on to an area of improvement for Luka, watch here in transition. He doesn't really do the best job of getting positioned to deter this shot or block this shot by Edmund Sumner, and it ends up being 2 points at the rim. And then on the very next possession that we look at here, he does something that he did pretty often in the bubble, where he picks up a foul unnecessarily, and that's not really something you want to see if you're a Spurs fan. He's a guy who committed 6 fouls per 100 possessions, and that number needs to go way down. We need to see him play more disciplined with more effort, and I'm hoping that just comes with time. Getting back into the action, let's take a look at Luka as he rotates over to help, and pause it. He is so close to getting a hand on this ball, but he actually has a negative wingspan in relation to his height. His arms are shorter than he is tall. He's got about a 6'10 wingspan, and he's almost 6'11. So when he's up against big guys like this, it's going to be tough for him to get a hand on the ball, and that's going to be one of the things that stops him from being a rim protector. One of the reasons that I believe he'll be a more perimeter defense-oriented big. And as we unpause this, you're going to see him whiff on the block, and that's not really his fault.
And we're going to wrap things up from @MacPena. He asks a really awesome question. He is my host, and I'm his new co-host with Ty Yeager at the Line podcast. We will be filming something sometime soon, so stay on the lookout for that. But back to the question. He asks, who is his best player comp? You know, player comps are so tough. I used to really love them. My buddy Gabe from Spurs Corner, I'm sure you guys have seen him, writes for Def Pin. Great content from him as well. He's kind of turned me to not liking player comps, but I will humor y'all, and we will look at some of the players or player who I think he kind of fits the mold of.
This may not excite some fans, but I think Dario Saric is a good comparison for Luka Samanic. And no, I'm not saying that Luka Samanic is going to become Dario Saric, but I think he's a good goal to aspire to. He's somebody who is about the same height, about the same weight, 6'10", 222. And he can put the ball on the floor. He can shoot pretty well. He can pass pretty well. He's not a great defender, and I think that's where Luka can separate himself from Dario Saric. But at the end of the day, I think if you get somebody who is close to what Dario Saric produces from Luka Samanic, I don't think you can be upset with that. And he should definitely watch some tape on his countrymen. You know, he may not be someone who is excellent at any one thing. He's kind of a jack of all trades guy, but a lot of NBA teams could use that. And he is definitely a solid role player for a Suns team that is on the come up right now.
As always, thanks again for tuning in, guys. I appreciate every single view, all the support that I get here. Let me know in the comments if you liked this video, if you enjoyed the mailbag, maybe if you didn't like it, what other questions you'd love to see me cover in the future, what other players you'd like to see. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button if you want to. And last but not least, I have one big shout out, not a sponsored video, but I love to spread love over the Spurs community. Some really awesome stuff at Spurs Gang merch. That's where I got this sweatshirt. It says, I feel like Duncan. It's in the same vein as those Kanye, I feel like Pablo shirts. And they're really comfy, really soft, and the design is super awesome and gives you a tribute to the great Tim Duncan. Again, thanks for tuning in, and I will see y'all next time.